Good afternoon. My name is Leana Scheffer. I am an interior designer and educator, and I believe that soft skills will allow South Africans interior design graduates to thrive in the 4IR workplace. The 2020 Presidential Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution suggested that South Africa can successfully participate globally in the 4IR, but they must be supported by the education sector. As design educators, we therefore have this opportunity to prepare South African interior design graduates for the shift to the 4IR workplace by developing their technical, digital, and soft skills. About 6 years ago, I was working at a design firm, but also teaching part-time. I observed 2 interns that were inside our interior design studio, and the first intern was very well prepared. Her work was always on time. She always did what she was asked, but she definitely lacked the interaction skills needed for her to fit into the office. The second intern had less adept skills, but fit into the work environment well by getting to know people, asking for help, suggesting times that she could assist other people at the office. And what was very interesting about this scenario is the person with the better social skills ended up getting the work placement, and not the person necessarily with the higher technical skills. So because I was also teaching in part-time during this intern, or during my time at the office, I was interested to see how the graduates could transition from academia to industry. And I continued this in-practice observation for the next 3 years, supplementing the curriculum to offset the gaps that I saw in practice. So, firstly, what is a soft skill? So, in terms of a definition, the best way to explain it is to contrast hard skills and soft skills. So hard skills, according to Bill Zova, is defined as being industry-specific technical skills. And that's the stuff that we teach in the curriculum primarily. In terms of soft skills, they suggest that it is cognitive, metacognitive skills, interpersonal skills, intellectual skills, and also practical skills. What is noteworthy in this scenario is that there is a transferability of soft skills between specializations. So soft skills are important no matter what you do when you work. But in terms of priority, I have found that each specialization or area of work will prioritize certain skills to adapt to the working environment that you find. And for design educators, this is important because soft skill development, according to Joyner et al., it just says that it allows our graduates to better integrate into the workplace, which is obviously our ultimate goal. In terms of the problems that I discovered during my studies is that there's quite a large lack of South African specific studies. There is a good study by Telemakos that gives an amazing overview of history and the development of the term, how it's expanded over time, and that is quite in stark contrast to the information that I could find about South Africa. So getting things like South African specific to interior design soft skills studies, that wasn't something that I actually found. So in terms of terminology, that's something that's quite important. So soft skills is the word that we use in South Africa. You'll see that the study found 14 of those studies. It's not specific to South Africa, but that's the sample group that I found. With the terminology, it's interesting as well that different areas use different words for the same things. And that becomes our first hurdle when we're trying to study and dissect this idea of soft skills. So in South Africa, we use the word soft skills. In places like Asia and India, employability skills are the preferred term, where 21st century skills are something that's a little bit more regional. So places in the USA and the UK also use that. Other words include things like life skills. And it is interesting because it does make it quite difficult to compare these systems. In terms of the different approaches to soft skills, there are two different categories that emerge during the analysis. So the first one is that some studies will focus on only the single skill approach. So 20 of the 25 sources that were selected focused on specific skills. So identifying specific skills that your graduate would need by the end of their studies or to integrate into the workplace, where only 7 of the 25 ended up focusing on categories. So not just a single skill or a list of skills, but grouping these skills into categories to make them a bit easier to grasp and easier to work with, in effect. You can also see, obviously, there was an overlap where some looked at specific skills, but also at categories. And then the good news, though, is that educators are definitely finding that this is an important topic. 14 of the 25 identified studies were pedagogy specific. So they included things like approaches, tools that you could use, frameworks, and really that for me was a good sign that we're moving towards in the right direction. Okay, so in terms of the proposal that the study puts forward, based on the information that we have up to this point, a conceptual framework for soft skill development is needed in South Africa. And the category approach seems to be the most appropriate because the single skill approach tends to vary over time. So it's depending on what technology comes out and what the political changes are, or the country's social changes are, those needs differ. So having a category approach would assist in a future-proofing basically the model or the conceptual framework. And the suggestion here is to do it in terms of 4 different categories. So firstly, a person to business, then a person to person, a person to self, and then also a person to technology relationship. In terms of person to person, Parliament and Monod suggests that relational effectiveness is one of the key aspects of soft skill development. So examples of that would be things like positive attitude, trustworthiness, effective communication, leadership ability, cooperativeness, responsibility, initiative, ability to manage your emotions, and then also things like team and self-awareness. And then in terms of person-to-business relationships, that includes things what Parliament and Monod suggests as organizational effectiveness, and that includes skills such as the ability to influence others, to read and manage others' emotions, to manage conflict, negotiating, coaching and mentoring, understanding organizational contexts, and developing meaningful networks. Because as educators, I think we understand the value of lifelong learning. In addition to the model proposed by Parliament and Monod, which is called the core model, there is an additional category that would become important, which is the person to self relationship. So, for example, this includes metacognitive skills, resilience to stress, motivation, and then also self-reflection and self-betterment. And then in terms of person to technology, because we're trying to assist our students to adapt to this for our future environment, it's especially important for us to look at their attitude and relationship to technology. And this would not just be their attitude towards specific technology, but technology in general, and also at the pace at which technology changes. So working with things like being exposed to something new, for example, like VR or AR or augmented reality and virtual reality, what their resilience would be, what their attitude would be towards this, and their willingness to learn these new things, and how to integrate that successfully into their new workplace. So in terms of just the model in general, there is also an underlying emphasis on things like work integrated learning and also internships, which becomes the testing ground to see if their abilities and their soft skills will function within this new environment. So in terms of what's next, the contextually appropriate framework for soft skill development is based on 2 excellent soft skill studies by Gail et al. And Huber. And the process that they use is quite similar, and it is summarized in this neck that we just had a chat about. So in terms of going forward, the steps that they used within their studies is something that I'm going to share with you now. And the idea is to use an incremental approach for us to start as a starting point for this conceptual model. So the first step would be to identify the local vernacular. So what is the terminology that your industry uses, or your town or your city uses for that, for these skills, and then to categorize this terminology into one of these 4 proposed relationship categories. So whether it's person to business, person to person, person to self, or person to technology. And then while this is unfolding, it would be essential to also look and identify what the industry's willingness is to hire based on these skills. So not just saying, okay, what are the skills that our students have, but also, would you hire them if, for example, this skill is really high and this skill is really low? So that would assist us as well in terms of our going forward. And also any perceived strengths and weaknesses within the students or the graduates that are at their firm. Okay, then the next step is to determine which of these categories in terms of strengths and weaknesses exist in your graduates of your institution. And then with that information, you are then able to design a supplementary program to build on these skills in the classroom. So in closing, I would like to invite each institution to partake or collaborate on this contextually appropriate framework for discipline-specific soft skills, which aims to help educators prepare our graduates for the 4-hour workplace. Thank you very much for listening. And if you would like to collaborate with me on this topic, feel free to contact me. I look forward to receiving your communications and your questions. Thank you.